G'day everyone, I'm Smokescreen and welcome back to another video. And if you've clicked on this video and you're listening to my voice right now, do not click away. That is the worst thing you could possibly do, because this race today is perhaps one of my most incredible, my most proudest moments in Gran Turismo. But before we get into all that, we're going to have to recap the season quickly. We've got a Test Season Nations Cup going on, 4 rounds at Tsukuba circuit, driving the Mazda Roadster touring car. This is round 3. We had an average first round. The second round was quite a bit better. I was able to hold my own and finish in 4th position with about 290 points. Alright, do we make it in? And this is round 3. 7 laps again at Tsukuba. However, we now have a little bit of weather looming. The weather's quite cloudy. There's rain on the horizon, but this particular qualifying session was actually completely dry. So that's pretty good. But the main things we're going to be looking out for today is the weather radar, or the weather on the radar. But this is the qualifying session for our round 3. The first qualifying lap there is an 11.7. So, you know, we're still in the 11s, which is good. We've improved to an 11.3. We got an 11.2 in the last round at the last round at Tsukuba, funnily enough. But yeah, it's pretty much an identical comparison here because the track is dry. I don't know whether actually the specific time of day impacts just how fast the track is, but I think it's safe to say there's a direct comparison to be made. So the benchmark, our best qualifying of this combination, was an 11.2. So as we sort of head to that first sector split, up on 11.38, we're slightly blue. So blue's a personal best sector there. So the fastest we've been able to head through that first sector in this particular session. That's not going to be my overall best. It's just your session personal best. Get it nice and turned. It's cool to get the rear tyres just slightly disconnected from the road at that last turn 8 hairpin, just to get the rear of the car sort of sliding around the corner. It allows the car to get pointed towards the exit sooner, and you're able to get more throttle percentage on. Just to get better speed down this straight, we're still slightly blue. Let's see if we can absolutely nail this final turn. Try and come back for a slight apex just at the end of the red and white curbing. On the inside there, don't run out onto the AstroTurf. It's a big thing I learned. Slight improvement there at 11.35, but Andrew Lee there has set a 10.9. That's good enough for second on the grid. Oh boy, okay, do I stay here? Do I stay here? Also, Team Radio's back, so keep an ear out for that. That's good enough for second on the grid. Later. Unfortunately, I didn't quite come to fruition because we got stuck on this screen for pretty much the better part of an hour. The race was hardly ever starting. We just got stuck on this grid, and I think what happens is that if there's a bugged car, so one of the players is not connected properly, the grid does not load until that player leaves, and obviously you don't know who it is. And they never did. They never left. So we were left with a dead lobby. So I had that front row qualifying spot violently ripped from my fingers. So we're going to have to go again in the next slot. So we actually sat in that lobby for about 50 minutes, 55 minutes, just waiting for the race to load, because it would eventually load if the bugged person disconnected. But yeah, it never happened, so we all had to turn our consoles off before the start of the second slot. And in this particular slot, it's raining. We've been held in the pits, so that's the water meter, that's the surface water indicator. It's just climbing as the rain pours down while we're all held in the pits, and everyone's freaking out in the chat in the bottom left. Eventually we get going, a couple of people disconnect, and we finally assume control of the car as the water reaches aquaplane levels. But my troubles weren't done, because everybody else leaves the pits apart from me. We're down to 13 players as well, and look at that, I'm stuck in the pits, everyone else is gone, so I have to sort of go back from the track and jump back in. That was me stabbing the throttle to try and get the car moving, but I was still stuck in the pits, so we're going to have to go again. Finally, we get back out onto the track, but what this has actually given me is clear air, so I think that's a good thing, because when the rain's bucketing down, this is actually full wet. This is full wet conditions. This is absolutely sopping wet, like soaking, man. And I think with these particular conditions, the skill gap obviously increases, so I think it's good to have a bit of clear air there. So this is our first qualifying lap. Our session is shortened because we were held in the pits for so long, but we're just going to focus on trying to get a good line as we round the corner here. Oh, a car spun out from the pack up ahead, so I'm flashing my headlights here just to say, look, get out of the way, get out of the way, you've spun out, don't block my lap, don't block my lap, don't block my lap, mate! Oh, mate, come on, man. Oh, God, honestly, what an idiot. Qualifying blocked. Dredge dragline, mate, come on. If you spin out, you got to look behind, because I've just had a qualifying lap ruined. And look, I apologise if you are watching. I don't actually think you're an idiot. It's just, that was my reaction at the time. And the team radio is there to capture my live reaction to try and add a little bit of emotion to the racing. So I do apologise, but look, you just got to be more aware, man. It's just as simple as that. If you spin out, look behind. That's all you got to do. Okay, but we had enough time to actually get a second lap started just as well. This is going to be our only lap too. We set a 24.9 on our balked lap there, so we've got quite a big improvement to make, and we're only sitting in 5th on the grid, so it could be a lot worse. The rain's actually just slightly subsided, and you can just see the dry line developing. We get it sort of half rotate, a little bit all over the shop at turn 4 there. The rain's just started again as we're heading through this right-hander there. The moisture has just crept up as we've headed through there, and you can see we're now slipping and sliding all over the place. But we actually had a slight dry line at the opening part of the lap. The first two hairpins, if I can speak correctly, actually had a slight dry line. So we've been sort of lucky there to try and get a break in the weather, try and get some extra grip on the track. The latter part of the lap is pretty wet here, so we're not going to really be gaining too much time, but I think the rain has just about stopped again, and the moisture meter has just dropped from that second line there as we head down the back straight. We're 2.1 seconds up at this stage, and we're only 2 seconds off Corey currently in the lead, currently on provisional pole position as we round this long right-hander up towards the line. It was actually a decent line. Yes, pole position, baby! Come on! Okay. Andrew's still going though. Oh, he's really late too. He's going to get it. Andrew Lee was still running in qualifying, and I thought the rain was going to stop, but I don't know what he was able to do. But that's us on the pole position, a top split pole position in the pouring rain. I think we were lucky to get half a lap of a semi-dry line there, so we were able to actually get a little bit more grip than the rest of us, but we've set the gold standard there, a 22.9. We've set ourselves a pole position in Oceania top split. Now, do I skate around the outside or do I claim the inside at turn 1? We'll see. It's pretty spread out, isn't it? That was me deciding what to do at turn 1, because there are 2 options in this wet weather, and we'll talk about that as this race goes on, but we're just going to get through the opening action there. Let's make sure we don't spin out. Okay, so the rain's pouring down, the moisture meter's that's on the left-hand side of the tyre wear graphic on the bottom left of the screen. That's the moisture meter, and it sort of fluctuates depending on how much water is in between your tyre and the road at any given moment. The first 2/3 indicate, you know, the track's wet, but if it gets up into that top third with the darker blue, that means that the car is at a high risk of aquaplaning. So we have to be really, really careful, and, you know, we have to sort of take measures and be really, really gentle on the throttle as the car's just sort of wiggling and wobbling all about. But if we have a look to that gap behind, that's opened up 1.3 seconds off the pole position to Corey Hack behind. We actually make a slight mistake through this right-hander, getting a little bit of mid-corner understeer there, but the gap has opened up on the exit 1.5 seconds as we head through turn 7 and turn 8. I think someone spun out behind us. I'm looking up on the mini-map there. So as we head through the turn 8 there, that gap's opened up 2.8 seconds. This is looking to be a really good opening lap for us. Just get really gentle on the power. The car does a little wiggle. Wow. Oh, okay. Alright, that's okay. Beautiful. We've got a 3.1 second advantage in top split after having started off the pole position. Okay, I was actually I was actually freaking out a little bit here. I was like, oh my goodness, is this actually going to happen? Am I actually going to grab a fully legit top split win? I've won top split before, but it wasn't fully by my own doing. I drove well enough in that race to get second. This was at the Mini Coopers at Goodwood. I drove well enough to be in second, but then Andrew Lee, who's actually in third in this race, was kind enough to donate his win to me. So that's how I got my first top split win, my first legit top split win. This one here is actually going to be, if I can do it, my first, fully, I don't know what the word is, I did it myself, fully personal, I have full responsibility over this top split win if this manages to actually occur. But we have one big problem here, and the problem is in Andrew Lee, who's got himself up in the second position into clear air. So he's overtaken James for that second position, and he's 4.5 seconds off me here. So this race is a 7-lap race, but we've just finishing up the second lap now, so he's going to have basically 5 laps and see if he can reel in 4.4 seconds worth of time. I actually get a better exit there. That's gone up to 4.8, but he gets better speed down the straight, and that gap's closing in again. Right, so I've got quite a bit of work to do to try and contain my nerve and try and keep calm in this race here as the rain is sprawling across the weather radar, going from the western side to the eastern side. Right, so we can talk about the wet weather here, because I'm going to actually leave this race in completely unedited. You can watch it start to finish if you like, and it's going to give me a good opportunity to actually talk about this wet weather in Gran Turismo 7. So I've actually made a video before detailing some of the wet weather transitions at High Speed Ring. Oh, that was a custom race I set up myself, and I set it so that the heavy rain would come and then disappear. But in this particular race here, this is obviously not a custom race, this is a Polyphony Digital test season, and it offers a pretty good opportunity to see exactly how the wet weather works, and it's given me a pretty good idea, and honestly I feel quite comfortable with how they've done it. Like, I don't really have too many complaints about it. So something I noticed is that the wetness on the track, so looking at that water meter on the left hand side of the tyre wear graphic, it's not completely dynamic, it's not completely linear. There appears to be a threshold of where the grip changes. So it's almost like you've got, I think if there's no rain around in the environment, you've got max grip. If it's cloudy with weather looming, I feel like there's a little bit less grip on the track, but only so much where you brake maybe a meter earlier than you normally would in the full grip conditions. And then as soon as sort of there's a little bit of moisture on the track, that grip sort of remains about the same as you do on the drier conditions until that water meter on the left hand side of the tyre wear graphic reaches about halfway up. Once it heads over halfway, once it heads over halfway, that grip massively plummets off a cliff, and it's at that particular stage where you actually have to adapt your line. So it's really interesting to try and constantly look at the car, try and constantly keep the car straight, and also look at the water meter before every single corner to see what kind of line you have to take. Because if you've got those semi-dry conditions, so the water meter is below halfway, you take a racing line and you can kind of see a dry line appear when that stage in the water wetness, the moisture actually happens. Oh, you've had a little bit of a moment through there, so we've just got to get out of the throttle, let the car get settled again and get back on the throttle. So I think Andrew's going to gain a couple of tenths through there. He's down to 3.2 at this particular stage. So yeah, a little bit of a dry line forms when you've actually got that moisture below halfway on the meter. As soon as it jumps up above halfway, that dry line disappears. And that's important to note, because when that water meter is above halfway, when you've got the full wet conditions, when you've got the least amount of grip, you actually take a proper wet line. So that's something we never did in Gran Turismo Sport, because that dry line, the drying line was never a thing in Gran Turismo Sport, so you just took the racing line slower. But in this game, because that racing line is dynamic, the grip level is dynamic across the width of the track, it's actually faster to take a line around the outside of the corner, not to actually take that apex as you traditionally would in a completely dry qualifying session, and skate around the outside of the turn. So that's what I meant at the start of the race, where I was like, oh, do I skate around the outside here or do I claim the inside? That was to do with the fact that the track was actually in the full wet condition at the start of the race, and I didn't know whether to actually claim the inside and stop anybody from going for a move. So I was sort of weighing up the pros and cons there. I was like, do I claim the inside so nobody can overtake me, or do I skate around the outside to get the best possible run through the corner but open myself up to an overtaking opportunity? I think I took a bit of a hybrid between the two. But if you have a look at this stage, we had a slight break in the rain, and you can just about see a dry line forming, but then the rain started again. So I'm obviously sort of conferring back and forth between that water meter on the left-hand side and the weather radar on the right-hand side. You can see we've now jumped into a patch of heavier rain, signified by the darker blue on the weather radar, and that track has jumped up to the aquaplane conditions. You can see the darker blue on the water meter now. That heavier rain, that darker blotch of blue on the weather radar has passed over the top of us, and that water meter's dropped to the point where we can't see that aquaplaning darker blue now. It's now in the light rain. The water meter is sort of right on the line of that second third there, but as the rain sort of comes down, that water meter climbs up into that last third. That darker blue begins to appear, and that's where the car can really start aquaplaning, and you've got to be really careful there. A slight break in the rain at that particular stage just gave me a little bit of extra grip to be able to really push this braking point into here, skating around the outside of the apex there, and we're able to get onto the power. That outside line, the reason it works is because the racing line, I think, is simulated with the sort of the rubber from the tyres sort of squeegeed into the aggregate and the surface of the road, which obviously decreases the grip when there's water on it. I think that might be simulated, which means it's faster to skate around the outside on the clean part of the track where there's no rubber embedded in the surface, and it also helps keep your average speed up, which means you're not accelerating from a lower minimum apex speed that you normally would in the drying conditions. But that's a bit about the wet weather. I think it's quite interesting, and it appeared the weather was not the same across all the slots either. Slot 1 was completely almost dry. This was slot 2, and it's completely soaking wet. So I think what's constant across the slots is the chance of rain, but it doesn't always mean there's rain, and I think that is a completely fine way to do it.
One more lap to keep it together.
But as we head on to this last lap, Andrew has reeled me in, just fair and square. I've set myself consistent 24s. He's been in the 23s, so he's been able to catch up. And have a look at the line Andrew's taking down on the radar. He's right around the outside of the corner. He comes in for a subtle apex later as he gets a straight exit here, but he's now 1.1 seconds behind. And what hangs in the balance here is that I can keep my cool and not make a mistake as the car steps out sideways in the braking zone for turn 4. I sent it way deep into the inside of the corner, and Andrew was able to close that gap to under a second. He's 4 tenths behind, under half a second, in one little mistake, and I was absolutely kicking myself at that particular mistake, because I think if I was able to hold him about a second behind up until the back straight, that probably would have given me the best opportunity to actually bring home this win here. So I'm now having to defend. Coming into turn 8, Andrew's got it around the outside, but that water meter, is it high enough so that he gets a better run around the outside? I think he does. There's a slight bit of contact between us as I'm just understeering as we try and get onto the brakes there. But as we head out of turn 8, side by side, down the back straight, I'm going to have the inside for turn 9, but because that water meter is up towards the top of that second third, the outside line is actually going to have the superior grip. I send it in as deep as I dare confidently go and try and slide it around the inside. Andrew doesn't give me too much room. He doesn't give... Wow. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh. I can't believe that. That's cruel, man. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Oh my goodness. He squeezed me through that last corner. He didn't give me any track width to try and get some speed out of the corner. Absolutely perfect attack from Andrew there. And he was able to steal that win from me. What a guy. What an absolutely cruel bloke, Andrew. I can't believe you've done this. But look at that. Despite the fact we led from the front, we got a pole position, even though we made a mistake and it possibly cost us the win, that particular drive there is probably my finest, or one of my finest performances in Gran Turismo. In fact, we were able to lead a top split race for the most part. I was really I was really happy with that, and it just goes to show I could have had it if I didn't crack under the pressure. The fact that Andrew reeled me in the whole race, it did sort of play a little bit of a mind game on me, and I was like, oh, am I going to be able to get this? Don't make a mistake. And I ended up making the mistake. The car stepped out sideways as we headed through that little right-hand kink of turn 3 up towards the turn 4 hairpin, and it just meant I wasn't able to brake as efficiently as I would like to, and I sent it in too deep, and Andrew was able to close about over a second to me. So quite a painful end, but the fact that Andrew was able to come from 5th on the grid, reel me in and take the victory in a 7-lap race at Tsukuba is thoroughly impressive, and it really just goes to show exactly why Andrew is one of the best in the country. But oh my goodness, that was 288 points, I believe. So a pretty good result there. It was actually over 300 for the win. So I was so close to my first ever 300, but it just wasn't quite meant to be today. But I think the wet weather definitely plays into my hands. I think I tend to do quite well when the wet weather comes up, so I can definitely keep an eye out for that and look forward to the rain. I'm going to be doing the rain dance every time I see there's a chance of rain. I'm going to be just fingers crossed for heavy wet conditions, because it seems that I actually tend to do quite well in the wet. But that's actually going to finish up my test season. I didn't do round 4 because I got myself a decent result in round 2. I got myself an excellent result in round 3, and that were my 2 results, because only 2 out of the 4 counted. I didn't really think the time spent on the 4th round was honestly going to be worth it, because there was actually quite a low probability I'd probably exceed one of my earlier scores. So I was like, yeah, look, I've got other stuff to be doing, so I'm not going to bother with this last round. So that's it. So there are the results there. Shout out to actually Meta7 Gear for pulling this table as well, because it wasn't actually available on the website, but he managed to sort of code and do his thing and put it all together into this neat little, very nicely presented table. So thanks very much for that, mate. But as you can see from that, Andrew has taken out the top spot with 649 points with a 335 plus 314. Noodles and Ranger Oz take out the rest of the podium. As for myself, I'm equal with points on Atom, but he is placed ahead of me for some reason, probably because he's got a higher result there in the 300 in round 4. But myself, 293 plus 288, obviously very satisfied with that to bring home essentially a P5, but P6 in the region with 581 points. But yes, that's going to wrap up the Nations Cup Test Season 1. There's a new one starting basically now, so we're going to have to get to that as soon as we can. But as for this video, this is going to be the end of it today, so do hit the like button if you enjoyed, and do subscribe if you'd like to see more videos and streams from me. Do leave a comment as well. Questions, comments, and constructive criticism, as always, very much appreciated. But that's the end of this one today, and that means that is it from me. So once again, I do thank you very much for watching. See you later.